Hey guys, Master Ningen here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video. And so the new season for Chain Battle is about to be upon us. We have the new Legendary Super Saiyan Broly event. And you guys know, if you saw from the last event, I didn't have the best luck. I'm not like super keen on this mode, so I decided that to get us all prepared, ready for the next one, I'd bring on a couple of people to discuss the event with us and see if we can get some good advice. So first up, we have our friend Silly Nolar, who has actually played the event because he is, of course, a JP main. Say hello.
Hey guys, so thanks a lot for having me on, Ningen, and yeah, I can hopefully impart upon you guys a little bit of wisdom from what I've learned.
And then, of course, we also have the homie himself, Mr. Goresh. I know he gave Toon some one-on-one tutoring last time, so hopefully he can have some good advice to offer to us all as well. Say hello, my friend.
Yeah, it's interesting because Chain Battle, I mean, it's still kind of like a gray area for a lot of people. Even for me, like we know what setups do the best, but we don't know why. Sort of like
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So obviously you can see here I've got the wiki page up. It doesn't have huge amounts of detail because it shows the advantageous characters, but it doesn't really show like good examples of teams that people used, which I know is a feature that they have for Super Battle Road. But Hybrid Saiyans, Siblings Bond, and Kamehameha are the key categories. And the advantageous characters, as you can see, obviously are the Go Bros, the Family Kamehameha Trio. We've got Movie Support Gohan, the SR Kid Trunks, and also the Zamasu in Goku's body, which is a bit of a weird one. I don't remember him being involved in the fight against Broly, but there you go. So,
oh, you don't? That's odd.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
Must have blacked out at that moment.
So, because he's not even, he doesn't. Obviously, he's not Hybrid Saiyans or Siblings Bond, but he's not on Kamehameha either, is he? Because he doesn't.
No, he's not.
Yeah,
no,
so
he's not.
That's a weird one. So, Nolar, obviously we have the advantageous characters here. They're all super types apart from the random inclusion of LR Black / Zamasu. So, when it comes to the extreme characters, who should we be looking at for our setups?
Well, if you're looking at it, probably the cells, because they'll at least fall under Kamehameha, a good chunk of them at least. So you could throw those guys on. I think if I remember, because this was the first one for JP, so we were all confused as to what works, and for some reason we found out you put just all the cells, even if they don't fit on Kamehameha, because they link really well, obviously because they're all cells. They tend to do very well. In the beginning, I used the Strength LR Goku Black Zamasu there, and then I use a bunch of other future like Goku Black and Zamasus and Rosés put together. That did okay, but towards the end, once nobody knows how it all starts, but after the second, third day, everyone kind of gets their footing, and people get the experiments out of the way, and then they know, okay. So for us, it was just a bunch of cells together did the best.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this one in particular is this is going to be the first chain battle that comes to global that has been on JP previously. Because up until now, the only chain battle we've had on global was the one that was on JP at the same time, which was the Super Boot one.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they change anything about this one, because this was the first ever chain battle like the game ever had on any version. And I assume there were things in this one that they weren't happy with or they didn't plan on happening. And I think we saw that, especially going into, I think it was the third or fourth, or no, it was definitely the third one with Frieza. Or no, maybe it was, no, okay, so it was God Goku. Yeah, it was God Goku, and people were like, okay, I'm going
still using cells.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore Hit, because Hit was the extreme, special character for that event.
Yeah.
And you could just create a full Hit supporting bench. But what people found out was the Cell setup as the supporters for the extreme class, they were just better than Hit. So there was really no point in even putting together that, special character bench when Cell was just performing better. So my question for this first one is, because there's no extreme special characters for this first one except for that one Goku Black we talked about earlier, are Cells still going to be the best choice for this? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, just to interject there, yeah, that was the one. You make a good point, because we were all still figuring out how this is working, and even the dev team is still trying to figure out how it's working.
Yeah.
Because again, the second one, you said we used all cells again, which outperformed the hits in all the other special characters on the extreme side. So what I said was cells. That's our experience, and again, they may change that and make it different. Now, if they strictly hold it to the categories, well, if you look at Siblings Bond, there's a lot of extreme characters there, and that's more 17 and 18. So there's a possibility that if the cells don't perform as well as I mentioned, it's because they make some changes. It's a possibility that it's going to be all the 17s and 18s that fill that role.
Because yeah, Goresh, I know when you went through your video with Toon, there's a lot of things that sort of factor into how well your units work together, and it's like links and categories and all sorts of things put together, isn't it? Not just like picking a bunch of units that are on a category. They have to be on shared categories with each other, and links play into it as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into this. So obviously special characters, or I guess they technically are called advantageous characters, are an important factor. Advantageous categories are also important. Then you talk about how many categories do these units share with each other, how many types do they share with each other. Like that actually matters as well. How many STR types are there, like of the same typing? How many links do they share? So there's a lot of factors. And then once you actually start playing the mode itself, the 3 characters that you choose, how well do they synergize with each other as well? So there's like 2 layers to this: the team building layer, and then there's also the actual fighting layer where you pick the 3 characters. And the calculations that are done for the mode, I believe they're separate. There's like one multiplier that you get for your team build, and then there's a separate multiplier that you get for the actual fight. Because when you go into the details of how well you did in the actual event, there's 2 portions. There's the upper portion, which is this is how well your team was synergized together. And then the bottom portion is, this is how well the 3 units that you chose in battle synergize together. So I think those 2 factors are coming together. I don't know the exact math to it, but there's a lot to consider when you're building your team, and then when you're choosing those 3 units to fight in the actual event.
Yeah, and I think this one of the factors that I think most people would agree, that most people find the most annoying, and it's definitely the thing that I found the most irritating the first time around, is that RNG factor. Because like you said, we don't know the exact details. It's not like a lot of other events where people work out stats for like percentages for defense, attack stat, all that kind of stuff, that we know how it works and we know how to work it out, whereas this is kind of a bit more of a gray area. And the first time around, I think I actually did fail to get into the top 1% right at the very end, and I was using like setups and connectors, and even getting lucky with like the units that come up to pick the 3 units. I was like perfectly emulating runs that I'd seen people get over 100 million, and getting anywhere between like 50 and 80 million. So I mean, I know Nala, you had a little bit of a rant video the other day. So I think the RNG factor, I think, is probably the biggest turn off for this for most people. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, mostly because I have no agency in deciding how the outcome goes at all. Right? The only factor I can decide pick is which teams I bring. But to that point, it's all reliant on my friends. Which here's a tip that I just found out, because I'm slow. But when you pick up a friend's like team comp, right? And then you select that, and then there's the 10 units that come up. Then you have to pick your connector there. Well, the one thing I just realized, and this is the tip, you pick the connector you think is the best. And of course, the thing is, that connector you pick is the options for whatever the team your friend builds. So let's say your friend just builds all hybrid Saiyans. They're going to give you a hybrid Saiyan to pick as the connector. Well, let's say you find an LR Go Bros and Rainbow. You take that connector and you select it. But then you go back to the friends and look for like a rainbowed hybrid team, and you choose that as the as your friend like team build, so that those are connected better with the connector if that makes any sense. So let's say you're just looking for that, you just find the LR Gogos that's rainbowed, but the rest of the friend system just has like 1 dupe, 2 dupes, or no rainbows, right? But well, you take that connector because it fits well with that team comp of hybrid Saiyans, then you go back to your friends list, refresh it, and that connector still stays there until you click off it. And then you look for rainbowed hybrids, and then you go, okay, that's the team I want to bring. And then you do the same thing for the extreme side. Again, it's still a little RNG, but this is like a little sidestep away from it. So that's a tip I can give you guys, because you can then kind of independently build your connector and the friend team you're bringing, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's to wrap that up. That's the only thing I can choose. And then it's RNG depending on which 4 people they decide to give you when you have to choose, right? 4 from the extreme and 4 from the super types. And that's, I don't know. I just don't like RNG. I like to actually play something, give me the option to finish off an event with gameplay or some kind of gameplay. But just pure RNG is, And for other people, they say that, well, that's a whale complaining you can't beat everybody like that. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that to that, but at the same time, it's like, I paid for these summons for a reason, right? So
yeah,
I don't know.
It is interesting that it's a mode where just you yourself having, like, you could have the best whale box in the entire game, and it doesn't necessarily mean
it doesn't
that you
equate
can
to
get the
anything.
highest score. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's funny is I would actually argue that Global has more RNG than JP does, just because JP has to spend those first 2 or 3 days sort of figuring out which setup is the best. So those first 2 or 3 days, you're not putting in real attempts, right, to try and get the top scores. You're pretty much just trying to figure out, well, okay, is this the best? Is this the best? Blah, blah, blah. Whereas on Global, we've already seen what the best setup is. So we're going in day 1 with the best setups already figured out, thanks to JP. So, like, we have more attempts with the best setups, which means that there's going to be more RNG that plays into the, like, who gets into the top 1% because it's more competitive, I would say.
Yep. No, you're not wrong there.
Yeah, because people with now that we have better ideas of what setups to use, then yeah, people are going to be hitting higher scores than they were in the previous one, at least for the first few days. And so then, yeah, breaking into that top percentile becomes a lot more difficult because everybody's putting out big scores already. So,
and people are going to know which units to save too, because we know for this upcoming one, like, for example, the strength family Kamehameha Goten is like the best connector to use.
Yep.
So if you have him in your box and he's rainbowed, and you pulled more versions of him so you can keep him at the SSR and put him as a supporter, you normally wouldn't just keep the SSR version of that unit because you wouldn't be able to use him alongside the TR because they share the same name. So in normal, events or modes, you wouldn't be able to use him. But because we know how valuable he is in this event specifically against BROLY, people are going to start keeping him because they know this event is coming up soon for Global. He's going to be one of the better units to put as my supporters. So that's an advantage that Global has, but it's also not really an advantage. It's more of I guess you can sort of see it both ways. It can be a disadvantage to players who don't have those friends who decided to keep the Goten, because it gives the players who have those guys as friends an advantage because they're going to be able to have just better teams to use.
Yeah, so what is the, based on your experiences from the last one, and I guess same for you, Nala, what is there a huge noticeable difference from having like the SSR versions of the previous characters? Because I know that was one thing that when we first started talking about the new mode when it came out, obviously for us for the first time for Global, and yeah, you started to see people's team comps pop up where they were using these extra SSR versions of characters, whereas I for one am somebody who, whilst I'd kept spares of some units in case they get easy A's and things like that in the future, like I didn't have spare copies of these units as their SSR. So how important do they really factor in if you want to get those top scores?
I think in my experience during the first one that we had on Global it mattered a lot more for the extreme units, for the boos, just because of the fact that Global only had access to, I think it was, so there was the physical boo, the STR boo, and then the that's it, right? There's just those two. And then you could use the tech boo, but that boo is like, I'm talking about the farmable boo from like the physical kid boo event. So like an SSR.
The Tech Super Boo.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the SR
so
boo.
if you had friends who had the SSR versions of the physical and strength boos, like you would notice a big difference because the special character makes such a big difference that if you had those 2 extra ones on there to help you out, it's going to make a big difference as opposed to just having like, I don't know, some random like kid boo or super boo there to just fill in the links.
Slot. Yeah.
And JP did have I think it was the exchange boo as a special character that Global obviously doesn't have yet still to this day for whatever reasons. Another topic for another day, but so JP, I think for them it was less important that they get the SSR, the unawakened versions of those 2 boos because they had more options with the exchange boo.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to play a big factor in this one coming up on Global though, because like we said earlier, there's no extremes advantageous characters other than that Goku Black. So I guess if you have the TUR and SSR version of that Zamasu, I don't know, because that's not even a special character.
Yeah, because they actually show the SSR versions of those characters on the other ones, but for this one, they literally only show the LR version. So
yeah, again, I don't know if they're going to make changes to that or not, but there's only one special character for Extreme, and it's that Goku Black.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even look like. Oh, actually no. So the SSR versions of the Goten, Goku, and Gohan family.
They're special.
Those are special characters.
Yeah, same with the SSR.
Same with the Gobras as well.
Yeah, the SSR base form version of the movie support Gohan is on there as well.
Yeah, so that's I guess that might make a difference.
Yeah, so there's a lot more options for the super types, but yeah, I guess the interesting thing for Global is going to be figuring out the best extreme bench, especially like you said, if they do change things around, because obviously looking at the Kamehameha category and the siblings bond, there are some extreme units, but yeah, you kind of are going to have to be filling them with multiple versions of the same characters. So I guess that'll be the one thing that would be interesting, of course, is, like I say, hopefully this video is going to go up not long before the event starts, and for all we know, they could have made some sort of change and the extreme setup will be different, but obviously we can only base this on what we know so far. So the interesting thing is I do actually finally have I have spare copies of the Gobros, so I should probably awaken them to the TUR state, I guess, because then they get because they'll pick up Super Saiyan, won't they? So then they'll have an extra link with everyone else. So I guess that makes sense. But because also recently everybody got the were they tickets, or there was some kind of token that you can exchange in the barbershop to get the extra copy of each of the family Kamehameha units. But I mean, again, I would imagine if you just have the one spare copy of them being at like 55% super attack 1, is that going to make much of a difference? But I'm not too sure.
I mean, just to interject real quick, of course, if you have the units, you're giving that to your friends to use, right? So my experience, I've used Truth as a friend quite a bit. He has like the last one, I remember just the JP one was the Golden Frieza, and that was like U11 Realm of God. So he had a ton of different topos, the STR topo, like base SSR, and then the Int one was a base SSR. That made a huge difference. Okay. Granted, again, he's got the Rainbow SA10, so if it's one copy SA1 at 55%, I don't know if that's a big deal, but if there is a secondary unit that you do have, like your friends have, more likely your whale friends, it does have a factor, like probably another like 10 million points, if I remember, using his box as opposed to someone comparable but didn't have that extra SSR version.
Okay. Yeah, I think the main takeaway is that there's so many factors to consider that go into how much damage you deal. Like, again, we just take a look at the Majin Buu one, which we both experienced last time. The advantageous categories are Majin Buu Saga, Fusion, Super Saiyan 3. So you would think Gotenks would be the best unit to use as your attacker, right? Mm-hmm. Or, just as a unit to put on your supporter, any one of those things. But then you take a look at the advantageous character list, and Gotenks is not on there. Yeah, there's Gohan on there, and there's Satan on there. So the question that we have is, which is more important, them being an advantageous character or them being a part of all 3 advantageous categories? Yeah. So there's no answer to that. I don't know which is better. And then there's also the factor of as an attacker, I know one of the biggest things that people consider is like what are the stats looking like, because I know that plays a factor into how much damage they deal with the attack that they do in the actual event. But then, which again, there's so many different factors to consider. It's like, okay, advantageous categories versus advantageous characters versus stats versus links versus category. Like, there's no way to actually determine with a set, with like a 100% confidence rate that you're doing the best setup possible.
Yeah, I mean, just to interject again, like for the Broly, this is I remember, I used Goten as my attacker, and that's how I got my highest score. I didn't use the Go Bros. The Go Bros I used as a connector.
Okay.
But logically speaking, you'd be like, I want my attacker to be my best unit. That would be the Go Bros, right? But to be fair, this is what I mean by, like, for us on JP, this is the experimenting, like the first 2-3 days. We're like, okay, I think it's this, and then you look at the scores and you're like, nope, that's not what they did. So let me go ahead and swap things out. So again, depending on how they approach global, they might do it the same. I would imagine they at least would start there, but they could change things up. And at that point, again, it's going to be a couple days for you guys to figure out your meta of what is the best attacker, what's your best connector on the super and extreme side. But from what I remember, Goten, the strength EZA Goten was my attacker, and I got my best score with him as the attacker and then the Go Bros as my connector instead of the other way around.
Yeah, that is really weird because again, that just plays into this whole aspect
RNG
that we don't understand. Is like because I could get it if Goten was in like an extra one of the categories and they weren't, but they're both in all three, and yeah, obviously one of them is an LR, so you would assume that they would be the one that does the most damage. So it's just yet another aspect to add into what makes this mode so confusing. But yeah, so there you go. So, I mean, all we can do is speculate based on what JP did get when they got it and what we sort of know from the one that we've had so far on Global. So, obviously, the information has been up on the screen, the units here. We've gone over them a little bit. So, like Nolar said, it kind of comes down to we're going to have a sort of good idea what to do right at the very start, but it's probably going to take a good day or so. So, keep an eye out. Not just on my channel, but on YouTube in general and on Twitter, because I mean, I saw loads of people posting, I think it was a day after it had started, when people then were posting of using, like, the full bench of Gotenks units rather than, like, Gohans and Hercules, and then people started to get new high scores with those setups as well, so it's something that is not necessarily set in stone right from the start, so definitely keep an eye out on all of our social medias. I'm sure we'll all be sharing our screenshots of our various scores. I'm sure I'm going to be posting loads of varying scores with the same team and getting very irate. So is there anything else you would like to add before we head off that you think could be useful?
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but definitely keep checking the high score list. That's where you can find probably the best strategies to use, because again, we can't tell you what's the best because we don't know.
Yeah, someone might come up with some pocket strat, and just be like, oh, I'm going to put, the AGL Gohan up front as the attacker. And then all of a sudden, everyone's going to be doing that. So definitely check your high scores. And those will change pretty quickly, Someone will get 100 million, then the next one will be 110 and 120. And again, remember, there's RNG. So yeah, like you might have the best friend box and your characters are good too, but at the end of the day, if the game's like, no, I'm giving you these 4 crappy characters, so good luck.
Just last
not
thing
much
real
you can
quick.
do.
Yeah, just last thing real quick. It's interesting that they actually display the top scores. So like, if you are testing like a madman and you're spending stones and you're like testing different strategies and you find one that's like, blowing away everyone else, guess what? You can't keep that to yourself. It's going to be displayed to the world on the list.
Yep. That is one thing I will say. I know that I don't want to drag this on too long because we'll wrap up here. But one thing I do think is kind of annoying, and they're probably not going to change it because I'm assuming the new one on JP is the same. But it almost feels like every day, if you're not someone who wants to burn through lots of stones to try and set a high score, you only really get one good attempt, because that's when you want to use like your best connectors. And then after that, you're almost sort of forced to do those 4 remaining attempts, so you can then use a stone to actually refresh your like friends and connectors.
Yep.
And that's something that I definitely found a little bit irritating. So yeah, hopefully you guys have good luck out there with your testing. I'm sure more people will come back to this like as the days go on. So let us know in the comments the teams that you used and the scores that you got. And yeah, hopefully we can all get a decent placement this time around. I'm sure I'll be keeping an eye out on yours, Goresh, and probably using you as a friend multiple times. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, let us know how you guys get on. Hopefully this mode will be more interesting this time around, and hopefully I can actually get some decent skill orbs this time, because I just did my Whis event for the week just before recording this and got the gold
Dodge
orbs give you more health thing, so that was worth waiting a week for. So
Congrats, man.
hopefully we get something good out of this. So but yeah, that so that is going to be it for us over here. Like I say, good luck. Let us know what teams you used, and we will see you all again soon. Have
guys.
a good one.